Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. On the hazardous weather graphic, we've got a high wind warning out for tonight, actually this evening, for the Alaska Peninsula, including the cities of Cold Bay and Sandpoint, King Cove, Falls Pass, and those areas. Northwest winds picking up 55 to 65 miles an hour, possible gusts to 80 miles per hour. And the time of the warning is from 6 p.m. Saturday evening until midnight. And again, gusts 80 miles an hour could be cause some damage possibly. And for satellite imagery, here's the storm system responsible for the warning. And it's those winds that'll be coming in on the back side of this out of the northwest that'll be shifting up here across the Alaska Peninsula later or during the evening hours. Otherwise, rain spreading northward and eastward here into the interior. One of the heavier amounts today, Sandpoint got 1 1/3 inches of rain. And of course, lighter amounts off to the northeast, just mid and high level clouds spreading in over Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula around midday today. Sunshine persisting though from Madawaska Valley across the Copper River Basin, and then back into the clouds here with a little bit of moisture, mostly back toward the Seward Peninsula there, kind of a weak disturbance lifting northward, and a little bit of precipitation there. Elam and Koyak picked up about 2/10 of an inch today. That was two of the heavier amounts, otherwise much lighter than that. And then just a few skips of snow occurring up along the Arctic coast there, mostly on the east side there, just a few flurries. Really the winds, the big story up there west, gusting a little over 40 miles an hour at Kaktovik and Barter Island. Otherwise clearing out here over the southeast coast. There were a few lingering showers earlier on the Juneau area earlier today, but high pressure clearing it out there as this moisture mostly will start to shift off to the east here. Some of those still sneaking down out of the north, but that's about over. And rolling this through again, you can see this low center. That's going to be tracking east and east-northeast this evening. On the chart, roughly about this position at 3 p.m. Saturday afternoon. 992 millibars, the rain spreading up toward Kodiak Island northward, and the winds coming around from the northwest. Those will be shifting over to the east and increasing tonight. And up here, that trough moving across eastern Beaufort Sea coast, that's responsible for those winds gusting, again, shade over 40 miles an hour at Kaktovik, with just a few flurries there, basically dry till you get over to about Cape Lisburne, Point Hope. They had a little bit of rain and snow shower activity. And that, again, extending down across the Seward Peninsula and then cutting off here in the interior, just clouds over the eastern interior areas with the sun down over the Copper River Basin. And again, clearing out here over the southeast coast, most of the moisture staying over in Canada. And for tonight, you can see this slow tracks northeastward, just about making it to almost right on top of Seldovia, give or take there on the position. Otherwise, rain, again, the strongest winds this evening, gusting 80 miles an hour for the Alaska Peninsula, diminishing after midnight. And look for gale force winds here ahead of the front as it approaches the northern southeast coast. Definitely rain spreading into the northern panhandle late tonight, and it'll be quite rapidly when it does. And so by tomorrow morning, be generally rain across the northern panhandle, cloudy all the way down to Dixon Entrance, clouds increasing overnight tonight, and then a mixture of precipitation here up toward the Alaska Range, spilling into the Kuskokwim Valley on the north side, but down south, mostly rain into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Few flurries, light snow showers up over the northern, mainly northwest interior areas. Some of that leftover moisture lingering throughout the night tonight. And then we've got showers extending back to the Pribilof Islands, diminishing winds Weak ridge, kind of transitory moving eastward there. Next system out west, spreading quite a bit of wind and some rain with it. Strongest winds will again be up over the western Bering Sea there at the main center, but that'll extend southward enough. We'll get at least periods of rain from Shimei and Attu, spreading in toward Adak late tonight. A little bit of a break here coming across the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, showers now, Bristol Bay. Strongest wind shifting to Kodiak Island. Storm warnings out for the Kachemak Bay area, I believe Shelikof Strait, and the Barren Islands for on Sunday for tomorrow. With that low center drifting over towards southern Prince William Sound. Rain in advance of that won't be as heavy as in advance of the front, but with that southerly flow, periods of rain will continue for the North Gulf Coast. Wind and rain for the southeast coast, pretty likely, and some areas of light snow or mixed rain and snow here up over the interior, with again the heaviest precipitation down to the south, and still flurries possible north slope on out to the Arctic coast. Outlook for Monday, that system drops southeastward and weakens. But front coming through the Panhandle, so rain overnight, Sunday night, and then Monday showers could be pretty moderate there and numerous, diminishing in the afternoon, kind of periods of rain up north and then cutting off. Looks like possible clearing in the afternoon for Yakutat. Maybe mostly sunny skies here for Cordova, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, at least to start the day out here for Cook Inlet. Next system bringing lots of moisture in from the west-southwest, driving it right into the interior with rain making it all the way, maybe even past the Alaska Range in the late afternoon hours. High pressure, 1,022 millibars, not too bad on the pressure there. Again, that's going to keep it dry and mostly sunny. North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin the entire day, and a weak trough here kicking off to the northeast, or actually coming around the top of this ridge. Could be a few rain and snow showers scattered around the upper Yukon Valley to the eastern Brooks Range. North slope not bad, maybe a few flurries on the central Arctic coast, and could be some mixed precipitation here up over the Noatak Valley and then back toward Point Hope and Cape Lisburne, but generally pretty windy, wet conditions for St. Lawrence Island, and this front stretching all the way back, trailing about across the western Aleutians there. So south of that, high pressure could make for a partly sunny day, definitely dry for Adak and Atka. Could be a late afternoon shower developing on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Moving on to the forecast low temperatures for tonight. Not too bad, right around 40, near 40 or into the lower 40s for the southeast coast. And here again, south central Alaska, about the same thing, 35 to 40 for the lows. North Gulf Coast, lower 40s, mid 40s Kodiak Island, lower to mid 40s Alaska Peninsula, 30s out west here. And then teens for the Brooks Range, locally the North Slope, otherwise mid to upper 20s out along the Arctic coast. And then for the high temperatures tomorrow afternoon, not really much of a warm up there, just 14 degrees at Anatuvik with 20 at Arctic Village, mid to upper 20s here for the Arctic coast, lower to mid 30s here, some cooler air coming in for the southwest coast, and mostly in the lower to mid 40s for the Panhandle. Lows Monday morning, looking something like this, lower to mid 40s here, milder over south central Alaska, pretty chilly again, teens to lower 20s through the Brooks Range, and not much change, lower 40s for the Panhandle. And then highs Monday afternoon, back into the mid to upper 40s here for the Bristol Bay area, back along the Alaska Peninsula, lower 50s, so a little bit of a warm up here. It'll extend into the central Aleutians, mid 40s to lower 50s here across the southeast coast, and mid to upper 20s again for the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coastal areas. And then out west, really not much change temperature-wise going on out there. Again, lower 50s, a little bit milder there for the central Aleutians. Back out towards Shemya, lows right around, or highs right around 50 degrees. Upper 40s for the Pribilofs, and again 40s into the southwest interior. Cooling into the mid to upper 30s here over the northwest interior, and again near freezing or a little above on the western Arctic coast to a little below freezing for the highs on the east side.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Looking at aviation forecasts now, a lot of marginal VFR, Arctic coast, north slope down to the Brooks Range, but south of the mountains, look for some VFR right all the way to the Alaska Range, so Tanana Valley 40-mile country will be pretty good tomorrow, but back out to the west, lots of marginal VFR with areas of IFR, especially along the Kilbrook Mountains, Kuskokwim Mountains, Seward Peninsula, another break, central Bering and Aleutians, and then out west, the next system spreading some IFR in towards Chimianatu. North Gulf Coast, IFR along the coast and along the mountains there, back down along the Kenai Peninsula. Southeast coast looking pretty good, starting out marginal VFR, but that'll become IFR tomorrow afternoon in the north and along the eastern border. Marginal VFR now all the way down to Dixon Entrance. IFR persists North Gulf Coast and westward through Passage Canal. VFR Cook Inlet, increasing IFR along the Alaska Range and Kuskokwim Valley in the north, extending northeast and staying marginal from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. Marginal VFR out here to the west. And for Monday morning, IFR now showing up here, Bristol Bay, northward there across Togiak. Pretty much marginal here from the Seward Peninsula down across the Yukon Delta. IFR North Slope and persisting IFR here along the Alaska Range and also northeast into around the White Mountains there. And areas IFR mostly along the border or the Panhandle, otherwise marginal, but better along Prince of Wales Island. And for the afternoon, just marginal across much of the southeast coast, improving here from Prince William Sound north and then northwest back toward the western Arctic coast. This moisture mostly shifting off in toward Canada and along the border. Next back sliding in from the southwest here, IFR well into the southwest interior. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR, same forecast for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, as well as rainy, occasional IFR at times throughout the day. Sunday, windy, same forecast. Isabel, marginal VFR, and Mentesta, VFR. So for Tanita, marginal becoming IFR in the afternoon, and Portage, IFR. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR to start, becoming IFR in the afternoon. And the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here, popping up late tonight, early tomorrow morning, right through the central interior. Upper ridge shifting eastward here, so we've got a little bit warmer air over the Gulf of Alaska trying to push into the Panhandle, and out west a little bit cooler, 2,000 feet and then 4,000 down off the map, and ahead of the next system, warmer air nudging northward out west. And for the icing possibilities for tomorrow, occasional areas of isolated moderate, light or isolated moderate rime icing here, central interior back down, better chance of some widespread moderate here around the Yakutat area to Cape Yakataga. This batch shifting off initially up to the west or northeast here, staying out west but trailing back across the Aleutians, and occasional widespread rime icing possible there over the central and southern southeast coast. Jet stream, 160 knot jet aimed right into the Panhandle there, right over Sitka, Port Alexander. And so that's going to be carrying that moisture. Pretty windy conditions as well, ridging out here over the western Bering Sea, northwest jet at about 100 knots. And taking a look at the 9,000 foot winds, low pressure tracking northeastward here into the southeast interior. Good southwest flow, 45 to 55 knots here, hitting right into the southeast coast. West-northwest, 50 knots or so, Kachemak Bay, Kodiak Island, falling back to about 30 to 35, maybe 40 knots here across Unalaska Island, 25 to 30 southwest interior, northern interior, northeast at 5 to 15, maybe up to 20 there across the Selawik Valley. And out west, this system pulling northeastward, really strong winds there, mostly north of the Aleutians, but even around Chimianatu, looking southwest at about 60, otherwise 25 to 30 over toward Adak and Atka. And the 3,000 foot winds, about the same pattern here, low pressure tracking northward. Strong winds 45 to 65 knots here over the western Aleutians, mostly staying, at least through tomorrow, west of the central eastern Bering, so just about 20 knots over the Pribilofs. And then some northwest winds here, 30 to 45 or even 50 knots coming down across Kodiak Island, 50 knots into the Panhandle. Turbulence, occasional moderate chop over here, below about 4,000 or 5,000 feet. Same thing in the shaded area here, southwest Alaska, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining us again, talking about the augmented reality sandbox, is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. And he's actually talking about a project from AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. A lot of acronyms, but some really fun stuff today, right, Eric?
You bet. We've got a learning tool that is a tool that's fun to use, and it really has a relevance to actually daily lives of anyone who goes outside and sees lumpy topography in Alaska. We've got a lot of mountains and such. You know, when I was younger and go on your first hike in the hills, say, you're given, maybe you're in the Boy Scouts or you get at the kiosk at the trailhead, a topographic map, a flat piece of paper with all these lines on it, bullseyes, long lines that curve back on themselves, say, perhaps things that look like this, a quadrangle or a topographic map. We've got here just to illustrate a couple of examples near Denali. Alaska has so much topography, so many mountains. And what are all these lines that we see? It can be tough to know what this means the first time you look at it. What we've got, all these lines represent lines of where the elevation of the topography goes through a certain level above sea level, say that this line represents where the mountains have gone from below 1,000 feet, mean sea level, up through 1,000 feet and above. That's your 1,000-foot contour. And when the mountain keeps going up, you're up to 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet, and so on. And that's how you get this little bullseye around the peak of a mountain.
Kind of makes layered slices, right?
Kind of like layered slices. Nice way to look at that. And when you see the lines are closer together, you're going up more steeply. If the mountain rises more slowly, it takes you longer in horizontal space to go through those different vertical increments. So
that is really hard to visualize.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a 2D piece of paper, two-dimensional piece of paper, but you're trying to understand what the three-dimensional world looks like. Well, enter the augmented reality sandbox. Yes, what is that? It is right here. We have the sandbox with us today, Sandbox 2.0, portable version.
Sweet.
Built up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we've got a couple of folks helping out today.
Let's see, Alana Valaji, and she's a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. If you want to give us a thumbs up there, Alana, thanks for helping us out today. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator from AKwx, also helping us out today. Thanks, Courtney.
And this tool here has a Microsoft Kinect to sense the level of sand in this sandbox. And then the Kinect feeds its information into a computer that then sends a signal to a projector to draw the appropriate topographic lines on this topography. The fun thing about this, as we can see here, is that the sandbox and its Kinect and its projector, they all work as a team. So here we've got a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. What if we took down the mountain to some degree? Watch as the software responds and redraws the topography.
Kind of a caldera forming there.
There you go, And what's fun about the sandbox too is it knows that gravity flows downhill, and we've got some water that's actually down in the lowest elevations. And what's happening now is we're making it rain a little bit. We'll fill up rain into that elevated lake bed, that caldera, as you said. And so now water is pooled up there. And what if you gouged out an outlet channel?
Glacial dam release.
There you go. The water flows out. What we're seeing here is a tool that allows people to touch and connect, Microsoft Connect, RRR, to connect two-dimensional topographic maps like what we have here, these flat things on a piece of paper, to the real three-dimensional world. I think this sandbox's real particular application as a learning tool to young people is, what does a two-dimensional map mean when it's trying to represent the three-dimensional world? This sandbox is kind of both at once. It's actually three-dimensional, lumpy topography there, the sand, but it's got these lines drawn on the three-dimensional sand that would be on a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Wow, that is a huge leap from the learning that we experienced when we were younger to how children and even adults are visualizing in these new forms of technology. Allows that to kind of reshape their thinking and visualize this in a very useful and absolutely hands-on way. It's amazing.
It's a hands-on tool, and
it's hard for me to sit here and not go play with that.
Well, that's what happened at GINA, up at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, when the first model was being made, the prototype with plywood and such. We had professional adult professor types had heard about this, and they came by because they wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
And everyone becomes that idealistic, wonder-filled youngster.
Sure.
And you just can't help but play with that, and to see how it reacts in time, and
Right.
it's a dynamic learning tool, and it
Dynamic,
responds.
That's exactly the word.
And
Yeah.
you wonder what applicabilities beyond a teaching
Right.
tool for
Where does it
topography
go?
can it have? You can see how in Alaska we have inundation mapping is an issue. If you had water slosh inland, say in a coastal flooding event
Right.
on the western coast of Alaska or the Arctic coast, you could see this. The concept is illustrated here as an introductory learning method. I think this is a potentially good outreach tool for all of us in Alaska.
Okay, so not only just a topographical sense, a mapping sense, maybe something that leads into understanding of how geographic information systems work with GIS, but also geology, if we wanted to get into kind of the formations and the bigger land masses and the representation of the 2D map. We could go into hydrology, which is very important in Alaska, of course. And even just understanding the weather sense. Mounding up a big pile of sand could be that Arctic high pressure system sitting on top of Fairbanks, and the voids would be low pressure systems. This can go a lot of different directions.
Yes, exactly. It's not just landforms, but pressure has contours of high pressure and low pressure. And I wish I had had this kind of a learning tool when I was taking
kidding.
Meteorology 101 back 25 years ago.
wow.
Would have been helpful, I think.
Probably would have gotten a better grade, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, Eric, and Alana and Courtney, thank you so much for your help there in the sandbox. We are going to play in the sandbox a little bit more coming up tomorrow on our next edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We hope you join us for that. In the meantime, make sure you go to alaska.edu/EPSCOR. That's alaska.edu EPSCOR to learn more information about what we're doing with this augmented reality sandbox around Alaska. We'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, still areas of ice here inside the barrier islands along portions of the eastern Arctic coast, and kind of going away at times, reforming at times, kind of a diurnal type effect going on there. And over by probably the latter part of next week, we'll start seeing ice form outside the barrier islands due to some colder temperatures expected to sweep across the area. Southeast coast tomorrow, gale warnings out. South to southwest winds, 35 knots, storm force gusts here on the north coast. Gales coming into the northern Lynn Canal, gales south 35, southeast 35, gales also for Stevens Passage, small craft advisories for Clarence Strait. And then for the Monday outlook, we've got east 25 on the north coast, and then west 25 here for the remainder of the coastline, with seas pretty high, up to just, 16 to 19 feet. And over the inside water, Stevens Passage still carrying the small craft advisory, south 25 knots, otherwise 20 knot winds, 4-foot seas. And then back here, winds turning around to the northwest. So we got something of a low trying to develop right in there. And for south central Alaska, north of the Forelands, northern Cook Inlet, north 15, west 30. South of the Forelands, storm force westerlies here, Kachemak Bay, across the Barren Islands, and just under storm force of the western North Gulf Coast, turning south 40 knots right up to the coast there, and then southeast 20 for Prince William Sound. Next day, winds come down, still pretty strong though, west 40 knots for the Barren Islands, down to minimum gales now for Kachemak Bay. Small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet, 15 knots from the southwest for northern Cook Inlet, northwest 20, higher gusts Prince William Sound, and northwest 25, with 13-foot seas for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And for Shelikof Strait tomorrow, 45 knots out of the west, higher gusts out of the bays back on the west side there. 50-knot westerlies in the forecast there for the east side of Kodiak Island, definitely higher gusts coming out of the off the island there. Seas 26 feet, 45 knots, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, coming under gales from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, and then west 30 for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Northwesterly gales in the forecast for Bristol Bay. And then on Monday, southwest 30 knots here, sweeping right up into Bristol Bay with seas 13 feet, subsiding to about 10 feet. And then west 30 knots here, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southwest 25 for the remainder of the stretch there. East 35 holding on to the gales east side of Kodiak, at least for a portion of the day. May fall under that late in the afternoon. And then southwest 30, Shelikof Strait. Aleutians, west-southwest 25 to 30 for the eastern areas. Southwest 25 to 30, Adak and Atka. And then gales here from roughly Amchitka Island up to 45 knots tomorrow afternoon towards Shimei and Attu. And then for the next day, south to southwest 30 knots, 13-foot seas in the western areas. South 25 to 30 knots here for the central Aleutians. And then south-southwest or mostly southwest for the Fox Islands at 25 to 30 knots. Southwest coast, northwest 30 south of Nunivak Island, westerlies 25 for the Pribilofs, gales around St. Matthew Island, and especially to the west, northwest 20 St. Lawrence Island. And the outlook for Monday, we've got southwest 30 from the Pribilofs right up into Kuskokwim Bay, 40 knot southwesterlies for St. Matthew Island, and then 30 knot winds here north side of Nunivak Island, actually all the way up to the Bering Strait. And then for tomorrow, Sunday, Wales to Cape Thompson, north 20, and then we got northwesterly winds here that fall back to 15 knots on the west side and the central coast. Much lighter winds on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow than what you saw today, 10 to 15 knots. And that continues going south here on the extreme east side, and then northwest or northeast to 10, east to 10, so pretty light winds, and 15 knots all the way down to Cape Thompson. Then from Cape Thompson to Wales, east 24-foot seas. And for tonight again, high wind warning out for the Alaska Peninsula, gusts 80 miles per hour until midnight tonight, diminishing after that. Rain and wind, Gulf of Alaska spreading into the Panhandle across southern Alaska. And for the outlook tomorrow, that system slowly pulls eastward, rain across all of the Panhandle, gale force winds ahead of the front, strong winds across Kodiak Island, storm warnings in the Barrens. Next system pushing eastward there, drives right into the western interior with a strong southwest jet on Monday afternoon with plenty of rain.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.